So this is the file hibernate.cfg.xml. You see, this is only one file. So everything related to your database is defined here. So you see here there is a driver class property. You need to specify your driver name. Okay, so if you are using a MySQL driver, you have to specify there. It is the same thing which you used to define here. Let me show you. You see, using the JDBC API, we have to specify the driver name here, class.foundname. Same thing you need to specify here, your driver class name. Fine. Then in your JDBC, you have to specify a URL, which is the get connection method. Same thing, it has to be specified here, the connection.url. Okay, this is the URL of your database. Then you have to specify your username, your password. Okay, we will cover this later on, batch size later. Then connection pool size, if you are using any connection pooling or not. Okay, so then you have to specify the dialect, that which database dialect are you using. Fine, these are the optional, which we will cover this later on. So there are three important properties: driver, URL, and dialect. Okay, now suppose you are planning to use Oracle after some time. So you just have to change these three values in your XML file. You will change the driver, you will change the URL, and the dialect. That's it. And if you are using a different user, then of course a username and password will also be changed if you are planning to use a different username. So you see how easy it is. Just have to change three values to switch to any other database, and from there on everything is okay. Yeah, dialect. Krishna, dialect is a language which needs to be used to communicate with the database. For example, when we are communicating, for example, if you are living in a particular part of region, then they use a particular dialect to address something. Fine. Similarly, a dialect is a very specific word which is used to communicate with a particular database for a particular kind of thing. For example, limit by. So limit by is to get the information from the database, is to get the number of rows from the database, and it is used in MySQL only. Similarly, row num is in Oracle. Are you getting my point? Okay, so Jagdish is saying that here how can I encrypt the password? Jagdish, this file will reside on your application server, so people will not have the access to log into your application server to look at this file. So there is no need to encrypt the password here. Or in database, you can have the synonyms to your actual password, so you can use the synonyms here. Fine. Okay, so these are the steps which you need to change your any particular database. Okay. Okay, then we will cover these later. Okay, so I have just covered the driver. You need these three things: driver class, URL, username, and password. Okay, then if you see this show SQL, so if you want to look at the SQL which Hibernate is generating just for your information, then you can set this property as true, or you can keep it as false. So Hibernate generates the SQL statements internally to execute to the database, because Hibernate uses the JDBC internally, so of course it has to execute the SQL statements then. So if you want to look what are the SQL statements that Hibernate is generating, then you can set this property as true. But this is just for your information. It has nothing to do with your actual application logic. Okay, nothing. Just for your debugging, just for in case if you're getting some unexpected result and you want to know that which query is being executed to get the information, then you can set it as true. Okay, so normally in a development environment we set it true to look at the SQL statements. Okay, if we find something going wrong or something not as per the expected result. Okay, then this is the format to format the SQL statements. I'll show you this. Okay, then there's an important property called hibernate.hbm2dll.auto.create. Okay, so this property says that if you do not want to create the database schema by yourself, you want Hibernate to create tables for you, to create everything for you, then you set it as create. Okay, so when Hibernate loads the application for the first time, okay, then it will create the entire schema for you. So suppose if you have 100 tables and you are not going to create the tables one by one, then you can set this property as create. So Hibernate will create the 100 tables for you. So fine. So Hibernate also supports you in creating the schema, the entire schema. But keep in mind that this is generally we do not use in actual production environment, because every time you run your application, this will remove the existing data and will create the new schema. So just for development, we keep it as create for the first time, and from there on we remove this property because we want to keep the information in the database. So if you are not having the schema, then set it create, run your application, and for the second time you remove this property so that you do not lose any of your data. Okay, then we'll cover this later. Are you following me, guys? Any problem? So far so good. Any difficulty? Are you finding it difficult or easy? I will show you this later. Okay. Okay, so let's start with the project creation. Okay, so you will create a normal Java project. The way we create other projects, it is same. So here you will go here, new Java project. Then you specify your project name and you click on finish. Fine. So you will have created one project. For example, I have created testing for me. Okay, then you have to add the Hibernate jar files. So you have to go to the Hibernate site, download the required jar files from the Hibernate site. Okay, when you download the Hibernate, you will have the bunch of jar files which are not required. So there are a couple of folders in Hibernate distribution which says required, optional. So optional are those files which you may keep or may not keep in your application. But you have to have at least the required jar files. Okay, so if I show you, I have downloaded here. So these are the required jar files which you need to download. Okay, this MySQL is for database driver. This is you will not find these jar files on Hibernate. Rather, from here to here, okay, you have to download these files. These are the required files to use Hibernate. Fine. So we are using the correct 4.3 version of Hibernate. Okay, you can download the latest version as well if you want, if you like. Okay, so you can have this recording. Then one by one you can come to know what are the required jar files. Then after downloading the jar files, you have to include in your class path. So how will you do that? Same thing. Okay, right click, then Java build path and libraries. Okay, so I have not. So you see I have added the jar files. There are many other files which I have added, so don't look at them. So from here this one, and then from here these are the jar files which you need to include in your class path, and you don't know how to add it. Just click on the add external jars, and then you can browse, you can choose the jar files which you want to download. Okay, then it is done. So you don't need any extra configuration, you don't need anything. You just need to download the jar files, add into your project. Okay, and you have to create one file called hibernate.cfg.xml file. So normally when you download your Hibernate distribution, then you will have one hibernate.cfg.xml file there. So you can use that file also, and you can change the name of the driver class and everything. Okay, so now let us move to the first file. So now suppose I have the employee, okay, and this employee has certain properties. For example, it has an ID, which is the primary key in my database, fine, and it has the first name, last name, and salary. Fine, salary is the integer, last name and first name are the strings, and ID is the primary key, which is the integer. Okay, then I have some getters and setters, nothing else, just getter methods and setter method. This is called the bean. So this is my employee bean, which have some properties. Okay, it will have all those properties for which you need columns in your database. So in my database, I want to have an employee table. The employee table will have the primary key, which will be mapped to the ID. Okay, a column which will be mapped to first name, a column which will be mapped to last name, and a column which will be mapped to salary. Okay, fine. So for that, you need to define the mapping for the first time. Keep in mind, all these things are just one-time effort. Okay, you have to define the mapping only once. Then from there on, okay, you will just use this configuration. You will not define the mapping again and again. This is just a one-time effort. Okay, then you have to create an XML file. The convention of creating the XML file is the employee.hbm.xml. Although you can have any name, but by convention we use the name of the entity as the name of the class, then HBM, which is called the Hibernate mapping file, okay, then .xml. So this is the XML file, a plain XML file which you have to create. Fine. Keep in mind that it follows some DTDs, so you have to keep this information. This is very important. Okay, so normally do not create yourself, rather you use an existing file, or you can use the Hibernate also. You can say new other. So here if you say Hibernate, you see Hibernate XML mapping file, HBM file. So when you go to click on next, it will create a dummy file for you, and then you can add the class mapping for you. Fine. So now this is the file which Hibernate will use to map your Java object to the table. How it will use? It will have the Hibernate mapping tag. Inside the Hibernate mapping tag there is a class tag. Okay, so you will tell the Hibernate that I have a class. Which class I have? I have the employee class, and this employee class is in the package org.hibernate.test.crud. So in my mapping file, I will specify the complete path of my class along with the package name. Fine. So this is the package name along with the class name. Then here is a table attribute. Here I will specify that which table I will store my employee. Okay, this table can have any name. Okay, so I'm saying that my employee is mapped to the employee table. This table name can be any name. It necessary not that you have only employee name. You can have EMP also if you want. you can have just this also. Okay, so this is the table name and this is the class name. Then I'm saying that there is an ID attribute. Okay, now your employee table will have a primary key. Fine, so the primary key is a very special key in your table. So only the primary key needs a different tag just to differentiate between the normal column and the primary column. You mapped your primary key using ID tag, and the normal columns are used properties tag to map. Okay, so you need the property tag to map your columns, your regular columns, while the ID tag to map your primary key column. All of those are Hibernate provided. You cannot have any your own tag. Okay, although you can have, but you have to do something for that. Okay, so here is the ID tag. Then you have to specify the name. This name corresponds to the property in your Java class. So I have the ID class, so you will specify against the name. Then you have to specify the column. Fine, this is the name of the column which you will have in your employee table. So it is not necessarily to have the ID. You can have like employee ID also. Okay, so you can have like this employee ID. Then I will specify the type, which type of field it is. So it is a int, that is, it's a numerical type of primary key. Fine. Then I have a property called first name in my employee class, and this property is mapped to the first underscore name in database, and the type is a string. Okay, so you can use any the types which are supported by Hibernate. So Hibernate supports its own type as well as any Java supported type as well. Fine. So for the string, there is a string type in Hibernate. We will cover that also. So this is the mapping. Any confusion, you guys? Any question you have to about the mapping of this table? Else I will show you the example of storing the information in database. Okay, so what are the steps? The very first step that you have to specify the hibernate.cfg.xml file, where you will specify the configuration related to your database. Then you will create a class which will hold the information about a particular entity. So employee class for holding the information about the employee. Similarly, if you're developing a online shopping site, so you will have the various entities there. You will have the entity like category, items, details, address, user. So you will have the classes for all those, and then you have the HBM files for all those classes. So in HBM file, you will specify that this is my class, this is my table, these are my columns. Okay, these are the properties which are mapped to these columns. Okay, you remember that somehow the conflict about the switching between the different columns, this is a one-time effort. Okay, so here you are mapping the first name is mapped to the first column. Now from there on, wherever you are using the employee, Hibernate will always map the first name column value to first name. There is no chance that it can map the last name value to first name property, because this is a one-time effort. You will not change it later on. Okay, so I'm just going to insert employees in my database using the Hibernate. Okay, so what were the steps to store into the database? Okay, so I have covered this one. You have the Java class and you have the table in your database. So you have mapped various properties in your HBM file. Okay, so this is the mapping which we have covered. Okay, annotation we will cover later on. Okay, just for now leave it. Okay, so these are the types which Hibernate supports. Okay, so if for numerical you can say integer, okay, long, short, float, double, string. These are the types which Hibernate support. Okay, do not worry about the fact that Hibernate, how does Hibernate identify whether because Oracle does not support the integer. Oracle supports num, while the MySQL supports int or integer. So because I'm specifying the integer in my mapping file, how does Hibernate knows that the Oracle does not uses the integer, it uses the number? So because we have specified here that I'm using the Oracle dialect. So because I have specified the Oracle dialect, so Hibernate will change this. So Hibernate will convert this to required type. You see, I am saying string, but in Oracle there is a varchar. Fine. So Hibernate will convert that particular type to the particular database type which we have specified in our configuration file. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the different database specific types. These are the general types. If you need integer, use integer. If you need long, long, short, float, double, string. Fine. These are the data types which in Java are specified as java.lang.integer. So you can also give this one. Okay, so for example, if you want to say string, here is string. So instead of giving the string, you can also say java.lang.string. You can also say that. So Hibernate understands that what kind of string needs to be changed to particular data type. So it will change to varchar. Fine. Okay. So these are the database type and these are the columns. Okay. So I have covered the required jar files which you need to enable your Hibernate in your Eclipse. You have to download the Hibernate jar files and include in your Eclipse project. Okay, now the very first step is that I just explained earlier, that first you need to get the session factory. Then using the session factory, you need to get the session object. Then you call the various methods on session. So always remember, you first need session factory, then you need session. Fine. So normally, as I said earlier, your session factory is one per database because your session factory is representing your entire database. So you do not create the multiple instances of your session factory. Rather, you can create only one instance of your session factory and keep it. From there on, you just use this instance to interact with your database. So normally we create the session factory using singleton pattern. A singleton pattern is such a design pattern which ensures that there is only one instance created for a particular type of object. Okay, so normally we create a separate file for that. So I have created a Hibernate util class which creates the session factory. So this session factory is being implemented using this singleton design pattern. Fine. So in a singleton design pattern, you normally have a static reference to the object which you want to create using the singleton. Fine. Then you have the method. you have a method called get session factory, and inside the session factory you create the factory. Fine. To create the factory, these are the only steps required to create your session factory. Okay, keep in mind all the other codes is just to implement the singleton design pattern. To create a session factory, you just need 3 lines of code. Fine. So these are the 3 lines of code which you have to use to create your session factory. Now because you are not going to execute this code again and again, so rather than keeping this code in every file, you just create a separate utility class, keep that in a method. Then from there on you just call this method to get the session factory. So in my all the examples I will call get session factory method to create the session factory. Since it's a static reference, so this will be accessed using the class name only. I do not have to create the instance for Hibernate util. Okay, so here you have to call first new configuration.configure. So this will refer to the hibernate.cfg.xml file. Then you call standard service registry builder. Okay, you don't have to remember these 3 lines, rather you just, because it's a one time session factory class, one time you have to write a session factory utility class, so you don't have to remember also. So these are the 3 lines which you need to get the session factory. Fine. Okay. So now let's take a look at the example. So here what I'm doing, I'm calling the hibernate util.get session factory to get the factory. Fine. Then using the factory, I'm opening a session. You see, factory.open session. So open session will create a session for you. Then I'm starting a transaction. I'm saying session.begin transaction. So here I'm starting a transaction. So whatever I do from here on, that will be a part of the transaction. So I'm saying now I'm creating an employee where I'm passing the ID, first name, last name and salary, which I have passed from here. So I'm passing the ID, first name, last name and the salary. Fine. To create the employee. Now this is the plain Java object which we have created here, employee. Okay. Now after creating the object, I'm just saying session.save and rest is done. So you see how easy it is. I'm just calling the session.save to save my employee. Now think about the scenario. If I use a plain JDBC, then what are the steps which I have to do? First, I have to get the connection. Then I have to create a statement where I will write something like that, insert into employee, where employee ID is this parameterized prepared statement. Then I have to set the parameters for ID, first name, last name and salary to make it dynamic. Then I have to execute this statement, fine, to insert into the database. Now I do not have to worry about that particular code. Rather, I'm just calling the save method. Save method needs an object which needs to be stored into the database. So I'm creating the employee and giving it to save method. And then I'm calling the transaction.commit. So after committing the transaction, I have inserted my employee into the database. Okay. So for this example, I am storing 3 employees in my database. Fine. So okay, so these 3 lines of code will insert 3 employees in my database. Okay, so what are the steps? Get the session factory, then get the session, then start a transaction, create your object, whatever you want to save, call the save method, pass your employee and commit your transaction. And after that, close your session, and that's it. Keep in mind, save method returns a primary key, fine, which you have saved for the. Now because I am saving into the database, okay, I'm calling this method 3 times to store 3 employees. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I'm calling this method 3 times. Now I need to create a database first. So database will be my test database. Fine. Then I need to create employee table with these 4 columns: ID, first name, last name and salary. Then only I can execute this program to insert into the employee, because it is expecting an employee table into the database so that it can insert the employees. Okay, so my responsibility is to create the database. first. So I'm going to create my database. Okay. So database is created. Okay, show databases. Yes. Now use test. Okay, so database is used. Okay, so I do not have any table. Now I have two options. The first option is that I create employee table manually here, or I can ask Hibernate to create table for me. Fine. So how can I do that? Simply in hibernate.cfg.xml I will use this property. So I will say create. So Hibernate will create the table for me. Fine. So I'm not going to create the table. Rather, I will just execute this program. So once I execute the program, Hibernate will first create the table, then it will insert the database data into the table. Okay. So okay. Okay, so it's finished. Now if I go to here, show tables, you see employee table has been created. Then select all from employee. Okay, so 3 records have been created in my database. You see how easy it is? And if I want to describe my employee, see 4 columns have been created. Employee ID as primary key. The second second and third columns are as varchar, while third column is integer. Okay, so I'm just going to show you some other examples. So now I'm going to disable this property because it will remove my all data. So here I'm going to comment this property. Okay, one more thing guys, I just forget to mention here. Yes, you can change the size. Let me show you the. So the employee ID is this one. You can say size equals to 5. So this will change the size of your employee ID. Okay, you got it? Okay. So yeah, I forgot one thing. When you create your HBM file, you need to tell Hibernate that I have the HBM file. So how you tell your Hibernate? You go to CFG file, and here you have to specify the mapping for your HBM file with the correct folder hierarchy. So since my HBM file is inside the org hibernate test and crud, so I have said org/hibernate/test/crud/ name of the file. So you have to include your HBM file in hibernate.cfg.xml. Otherwise, that mapping file will not be considered. Okay, and you will get the exception. Now, let me show you one more thing. If you need to know that what are the SQL statements which Hibernate generates, then you can set it as true. Okay, so I'm going to rerun the example to show you the SQL statements which Hibernate has used to run this example. Okay, Now I have to, suppose I'm going to game. Okay. Okay, so if you see here, Hibernate first drop the table if already exists, because I set this property to tell Hibernate that create the schema for me. Okay. So then it created the table for me from create table employee and everything. Then it executed the insert statement. So you see it executed the insert statement with these values, then 3 insert statements for 3 records. So if you want to look at the SQL generated by Hibernate, you can always set this property as true. So you can have a look that what are the SQL statements Hibernate is generating. Just for debugging, if something goes wrong in an application, you want to find out the root cause, then only you do that. Normally in production environment, we do not enable it. Okay, I have inserted. Now I will show you the other operations. For example, display, how to get the information from the database. Now I'm going to show you how you can get the information from database. Okay. Okay, so suppose now again you have to first get your factory, then you have to open the session. Now since you're reading from the database which does not require any transaction, so you don't need to create your transaction now. Only when you're calling the create, insert or update or delete, then only you need a transaction. For reading from database does not require a transaction. Fine. So I did not put the session.begin transaction here. Fine. Okay, before that okay, so how do you do that? Let me show you. Okay. For example, I have a method called display record. I will supply the ID and Hibernate will give me the record for that particular ID. So how do I do that? First I have to take the session from the factory, then okay, so here there is a method called, there are two methods, load and get method, to get the object from database. I will talk about the difference between the load and the get method later on, but for now, fine. If you need to get the information from database, if you need to read a particular row from database, then you call load or get method. Fine. So I'm calling the load method. The load method, you have to specify that for which class you need the data. So because I need the data for employee class, so I will say employee employee.class. So this way you have to specify the class for which you need data, and then you have to specify the ID for which you want the employee, a particular row. So I'm saying my IDs, let me make this. So I have the 1, 2, 3. So here I will say employee ID 1. Fine. So it will load from the employee. Okay, so now you see I'm just calling the load method and giving the ID to Hibernate, and Hibernate gives me the employee. Now the logic for getting the result set, mapping the columns to the current properties, I'm not doing that. Hibernate is doing on my behalf. So I'm getting the employee which has everything from the database. So just I'm displaying the information employee.get first name, last name and salary, and then I'm closing the connection. Fine. So you see how easy it is to get the information from database. I'm just calling the load method and that's it. I'm not doing any mapping, I'm not doing any result set, I'm not doing any has next method, I'm not calling any result set.getString, nothing. Hibernate is doing everything for me. Okay, so I'm just calling this method from here. For example, I'm passing this 1. So this will give me the employee with the ID 1. Okay, so you see I got the information from employee, the first name, the last name and the salary. So this is how it is. It's very easy. Fine. Okay, now suppose if you need all the employees, so how will you do that? If you need all the employees, then again you open the session, then there is a HQL, Hibernate query language. Fine, so how you create a query? This is not a SQL, this is rather HQL, Hibernate query language, which is much faster than SQL, plain SQL, because Hibernate understands the SQL well. So how you do that? You just call this session.createQuery and here you specify the from class, from employee. So it will give you all from the employee. Okay, if you have any particular condition, then you can put here, for example, for employee where salary is greater than 1000, then it will give you the employee having the salary greater than 1000. Or you just say from employee, it will give you all the employees, and then you call the .list method. So whoever satisfies this particular condition will be given as a list. So for example, if you say from employee where salary is greater than 1000, then it will give you all the employees who are having the salary greater than 1000. Fine, but I'm not putting any condition. I want to get all the employees, so I'm just saying from employee, and .list method is to get all the information from the database. Okay, so I'm getting the employee, then I'm just having a for each loop to iterate over the employees. Fine, so this is just to get it. So if you run this example, okay, so you see I got the 3 employees from my database. Okay, similarly, if I need to update any particular employee, then I will do that. Okay, so I'm going to update my employee. So how do I do that? Again, same thing. You get the factory, get the session, because you're updating, so you need to start a transaction. So start the transaction. Now to update the employee, first I have to take from the database so that I can get the current state from my database, and then only I can update particular employee, because I know only the employee ID to update the employee. I do not know anything else. So for a particular employee ID, I'm getting from the database, calling the get method, same as load method. You have to provide the class and the ID. So I'm passing the employee ID to this method. So this will get the employee from the database. Then I'm setting the salary, the new salary. Fine. So here, for example, employee 1 has 1,000 salary. So I will set it to 12,000. Fine. So I will pass here 12,000. So I'm setting the salary and then just calling the update method. And that's it. It will update the employee. And then committing the transaction. Fine. So here I'll pass the 12,000 to set the salary of the employee 12. Okay. Okay. So here, just calling this one. Okay, updating the record and finished. So if I go here and select all, so you see my employee has been updated to have salary 12,000. So you see how easy it is to perform the database operations. And this is what you actually do in your project. You will update your tables, you will delete your tables, you will insert into your tables. This is the normal functioning what you do in your project. So using the Hibernate, it's very easy. Just get the session, prepare your object, and call the database related function. Okay. Now similarly, I'll show you how to delete from the database. Okay. Okay. So here I want to delete the employee with ID 3. So it's very simple. Again, get a session, start transaction. Fine. First, you need to take from the employee database. Okay. So I took the employee ID with the for employee ID 3 from the database. Then I'm calling the delete method and passing the object, employee object. So this delete will delete the employee, this employee with the ID 3rd from the database table. Okay, just call the delete method on the employee. Keep in mind, to update and to delete, first you have to get the object from database, then only you can delete or update. Okay, so you have to perform two operations, first get and then delete. Okay, so I'm just going to call it delete, finished. Yes. So now you see only 2 employees. 3rd has been deleted from my database. Okay. Is it easy, guys? Using Hibernate? Okay, so we have covered this SessionFactory. Okay, we have covered annotation. I will cover tomorrow. Okay, then I have covered this also. Output is okay. Okay, how it works I have covered. You have to get the SessionFactory, then you have to open the session, then you have to start the transaction, and after performing the operation you have to commit your changes. Okay. So these are the properties which we have covered. Hibernate.cfg.xml. Okay, we have covered various operations: add, list, update, and delete. We have covered. Okay, so these are the operations which to update the record. This is to delete a record. Okay, this we will cover tomorrow. Okay, thank you everyone for attending the session. Please do have some feedback. Okay, it's very important.